Hello and welcome to CrossTalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. Chaos on the streets of Kiev. After a short truce, rioters are again wreaking havoc. The so-called opposition appears to have no interest in the legally elected government. Force is being met with force. Where Ukraine goes from here is anyone's guess. To CrossTalk developments in Ukraine, I'm joined by my guest, Marcus Papadopoulos in London. He's the editor of Politics First magazine. Also in London, we have Robert Oles. He is the director of the Bruges Group. And in Washington, we cross to Ariel Cohen. He is a senior fellow in Russian and Eurasian Studies and International Energy Security at the Heritage Foundation. All right, gentlemen, CrossTalk rules, and in fact, that means you can jump in anytime you want, and I very much encourage it. Marcus, if I can go to you first in London, I've been watching the pictures coming out of Kiev for the last day and a half. This looks like a armed insurrection. This looks like an organized coup against the government in Kiev. And we have to point out here that the government in Kiev, Mr. Yanukovych, has reached out to the opposition numerous times over the last 2 weeks. But still, the violence continues. And I want to make it very clear, there's violence on both sides right now. Marcus, what is your reaction?
Can I just say, first of all, Peter, that ordinary people in Europe and indeed the rest of the world are absolutely disgusted by what they've seen on their television sets this week in Ukraine. And that disgust is all the more pronounced because the violence is being perpetrated by right-wing extremists, by neo-Nazi mobs that are intent on overthrowing the democratically elected government of Ukraine. And that is an intolerable situation. And we must move away from what we're hearing by Western journalists and Western politicians, that these so-called protesters are protesters. They're not protesters, they're militants, they're terrorists. They became militants or terrorists the day they took up arms against the police force in Kiev. You cannot call people peaceful protesters when they take up guns, when they take up Molotov cocktails, and they start not just injuring police officers, they're actually killing police officers. That would not be accepted. No, would not be accepted.
It certainly
Washington.
It certainly wasn't accepted in Athens.
And it wouldn't be accepted in London.
It wasn't accepted in London. It wasn't accepted in any kind of European capital. But Ariel, you know, I mean, right sector, Svoboda, do you like these kinds of people? I mean, they seem to represent this mob that you can see with live pictures from multiple sources. I mean, are these Jeffersonian Democrats now?
Well, let's start with this. The Yanukovych government sent troops to kill people in November and beat students up. So the ones who resorted to violence were not the right sector at all. It was the Yanukovych regime back in November.
Ariel,
and the reason for that...
Can you answer my question? I asked you a different question.
Yeah,
do you like dealing with Svoboda? Do you like dealing with right sector? Go ahead.
Peter, I am the first one to denounce the anti-Semites and the Nazi sympathizers anywhere, including in Russia, by the way. But the ones who resorted to violence, the ones who pretended to reach out to the moderate opposition and then did not do what they promised. They did not pass a legislation that they promised to pass about changing the Constitution,
well, I mean,
that they agreed to the change.
Why should a mob of people be out in the street saying, change the law? Why don't you have an election cycle? That's what normal countries do. This opposition wants to change the government. This government was elected, a president was elected, the parliament was elected.
Peter,
Brussels gave it
No,
I'm making sure our viewers understand reality because I agree with what Marcus had to say. There's a huge distortion here. Robert, okay, let's go to our third guest. Let's go to our third guest first. Before we go back to you, go ahead, Robert. Give me your take on what's going on here, because this is a very serious event playing out in Kiev right now.
The situation is being whipped up by the European Union and the United States of America with the aim of destabilising the Ukraine and trying to play some zero-sum game where they hope to eliminate Russian influence within that country. It is a political game that's being employed by Western powers that are causing a great deal of havoc on the streets of Ukraine and pushing the country towards a very, very dangerous situation that will not end well. There is serious meddling, Western meddling in that country, And it must stop. The European leaders, the United States of America, should respect the government of Yanukovych. There's an election next year. If the people don't like him, they can vote him out. Of course, the danger is that they probably won't.
So
Many people in Ukraine
like him.
support Yanukovych.
Okay.
This is being totally whipped up.
It's not a popularity contest. I mean, if Mr. Obama has 30% or 33% popularity in the United States, and no one's asking him to leave, at least yet. Marcus, let's go back to you here. I mean, this is what it gets down to. We know that Victoria Nuland has spent about $5 billion on this investment here. Is this a good return?
Well, the whole idea, which is being spun at the moment by the West, that what's happening in Ukraine is a matter of freedom versus tyranny, that's absolute nonsense. And of course, Victoria Nuland's comments last week actually demonstrate that America and the European Union are playing a game of chess. And it's a geostrategic game of chess they're playing in Ukraine. And this has been going on since the 1990s. The West is trying to encircle Russia on its western borders by bringing in state after state into the EU and into NATO. Let me just say this to anyone who argues that this is a matter of freedom versus tyranny. In a tyranny, people don't take to the streets, let alone kill police officers. This wouldn't happen in Saudi Arabia, which America is a staunch supporter of.
Okay. Ariel, would you like to reply to that? Go ahead. Fair time.
Yeah, of course. I was born in Ukraine. I've been to Ukraine. I'm Jewish. I despise the Nazis and the neo-Nazis anywhere in Europe, and unfortunately there are lots of them everywhere these days. But the majority of people who demonstrated, I'm not talking about the violent fringe. Clearly there's a violent fringe there. But the majority of younger, educated Ukrainians, including in the South, okay, you're interrupting me.
Go ahead.
You're interrupting me. Excuse me. I said there patiently.
Let Ariel continue. Ariel.
Okay, I said there patiently and listened. Okay, so please. The majority of people who are demonstrating against Yanukovych are young, educated, Western-oriented people who want to live in a country that doesn't have as much corruption as Yanukovych's regime bred, and Yanukovych totally lost support of the majority of the population. Okay. And what he needed to do was to arrange a political transition with the opposition so that sometime late spring, early summer, they have an election, including presidential election, and they change the constitution. Okay. And it is ludicrous to blame the West.
I'm sorry, Ariel, what you're saying is ludicrous too, because is he trying to, and I'm going to address this to Marcus now, he's arranging all of this so he can be thrown out of power. I don't get it, okay? He is elected, he's going to stay. I'm going to go to Marcus now. Okay, equal time here. This is what it's all about here, is that the EU and the United States, depending on which gambit, you know, they want to force their hand now. It's a $5 billion investment. They got to make their move now, because there will be an election if they keep to their schedule, and it might not turn out the way they want, because Eastern Ukraine, more populous, is not for this agenda of the EU. That's why Yanukovych rejected the association agreement. So this is the chess game you're talking about. They're running out of time. Go ahead.
President Yanukovych took a decision last November to pursue closer economic relations with Russia, and he has every right to do that. Like in Britain, David Cameron wants a reformed relationship with the European Union. He has a mandate from the British people, and that should be accepted. People in Kiev have the right to protest against President Yanukovych's decision last year. But he is the democratically elected president. And let's not forget, in 2010, when he won that presidential election, that was recognised by the EU, recognised by the US. They've been negotiating with him for the last 4 years. But because he chose to pursue closer relations with Russia, all of a sudden he becomes a tyrant. He becomes a thoroughly wicked piece of work. We've seen this for the last 20 years. We've seen every single government in the world which is in a geostrategic location and pursues an independent foreign policy. We've seen that government demonised. We saw that with the Serbs. We're seeing that in Syria at the moment, and now we're seeing that in Ukraine. It's an intolerable situation, and it's a very dangerous situation.
Robert, how do you feel about this? Have equal time for all guests on the program. Robert, how do you feel about the European Union's approach towards Ukraine? Because when it rejected this association agreement, because it was a bad deal, by the way, it would push the country even into a deeper recession than it is now. So that kind of austerity wasn't welcomed. And now the EU turns around and says you're not a legitimate figure to deal with. But you know what? They're in Kiev right now negotiating with Mr. Yanukovych. Why are they talking out of both sides of the mouth at the same time?
Well, the European Union has been bullying the Ukraine. They've been having quota restrictions on Ukrainian exports to the European Union, which is hurting their economy. The EU has not been a friend to Ukraine. The association agreement, if it were to be signed, it would mean the exporting of EU regulations to Ukraine. It would mean the closure of many businesses, because it will mean higher regulation. It will mean businesses have to meet EU standards, including environmental standards, which aren't particularly enforced in the Ukraine at the moment. It will mean job losses. It was a very bad deal, and it's been estimated that exporting EU regulations to Ukraine will cost their economy £20 billion a year. 20 billion euros a year, rather. That's how much it would hurt the Ukrainian economy. It's not a good deal. Russia is the main export market for 75%.
The democratically elected government of Ukraine said it was a bad deal. That's plain and simple. All right, gentlemen, we're going to go to a short break here. And after that short break, we'll continue our discussion on events playing out in Ukraine. Stay with RT.
I love it.
When I close my eyes, I see people in masks. Sometimes I think that Euromaidan itself is a face covered by a mask. There are people in masks on both sides of the barricades. And you know, sometimes it feels as if all of Ukraine is now masked.
It was a terrible mistake, and we're working very hard to make up for it.
Once again, we put something on the air. It's a flat-out lie.
Have you ever had sex with Governor Rick Perry?
No, wait. Do not answer that.
I want you to watch what we're about to do, because you've never seen anything like this on television.
Right from the scene. First-rate news and eye-gripping pictures. On our reporters' Twitter and Instagram. To be in the know, follow us online.
Dramas that can't be ignored. Stories others refuse to notice. Faces changing the world right now. A full picture of today's news. Live, on demand, from around the globe. Rockley.tv.
Business news, reviews, economic ups and downs from the finance hub of Moscow to London, New York, Shanghai and the rest of the globe. Join me, Katie Pilbeam, every week on RT.
I love it. He's trying.
Welcome back to CrossTalk, where all things are considered. I'm Peter Lavelle. To remind you, we're discussing recent developments in Ukraine. Okay, I'd like to go back to Ariel in Washington. Ariel, how do you reflect upon that leaked tape with Victoria Nuland? Because it really, when you connect the dots right here, she's made a huge investment for regime change of one form or another, or have a regime friendly to Brussels and Washington, no matter how you want to look at it. It's regime change here. How do you look at that and what's playing out on the streets right now? I mean, is this what her investment was all about, is to bring this city? And I love Kiev. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. And you know what? It looks really awful right now and even dangerous. I mean, this is what American money is bringing democracy to Ukraine, destroying its capital.
Well, first of all, Victoria Nuland did not make a $5 billion investment in Ukraine. That's rubbish. Second of all, let's talk about Russia's investment. Russia cut gas prices to support Yanukovych. Russia is buying Ukrainian junk bonds of the Ukrainian government with the taxpayers' money.
No, they're Euro bonds. They're Euro bonds, Ariel. No, get your facts straight, okay? They're Euro bonds. Russia wants its money back.
I have my facts straight very much.
Okay. No. I mean, just because Russia steps in to help out a neighbor.
Me, Peter.
Helps a neighbor.
Russia is the main export market for many Ukrainian goods. It doesn't make sense, an agreement with the European Union.
Russia is trying to bring Ukraine
of Ukrainian exports go to
the Eurasian Union.
Okay, keep going, Ariel. Keep going.
Yeah, so I'm saying is that Russia is expending billions and billions of dollars to bring Ukraine into the Eurasian Union, and the majority of Ukrainian people don't want to do that. But this policy of Russia pulling,
they haven't signed the agreement
EU
yet,
and the United States involvement may bring to the breakup of Ukraine. That will be a catastrophe.
It's Russia breaking up Ukraine. Okay, that's a new one here. Okay, Marcus, let me go to Marcus here. Marcus, you know, it's very interesting to get our history straight. Let's get our history straight, okay?
Let me finish what I'm saying, Peter.
You made your point. It's Russia's fault. Marcus, if I can go to London. One of the interesting things is that when the Ukrainians said no, the elected, legitimate government of Ukraine said no to the association agreement, what happened? Let's remind our viewers. Russia stepped in and said, hey, why don't we have a trilateral discussion here where everyone can be a winner here? I'll give you a good example. Canada is in NAFTA. Canada has an association agreement with the European Union. Why can't Ukraine work with the Eurasia Union and work with the European Union? But no, I guess there's an exception here. Ukraine doesn't get that privilege. Marcus, go ahead.
Well, what Ariel said just now, that Russia's actions could result in the breakup of Ukraine, is utter nonsense. Victoria Nuland's comments demonstrate America's lip service to the concept of freedom and democracy. And we've got other examples of that. We saw late last year American politicians, Senator John McCain, flying into Ukraine, an independent, sovereign country, and joining the protest movement, meeting opposition leaders in calling for early elections in Ukraine and calling for the overthrow of the Ukrainian government, which is democratically elected. I'd like to say to Ariel,
why is it dangerous to have elections?
What you're saying, that Russia is contributing to the chaos in Ukraine.
That was a challenge.
Ariel, no, you made your comment, Ariel. Ariel, you made your comment that Russia is acting dangerously. Well, I don't see Russian politicians flying into Kiev and calling for the overthrow of a democratically elected government. How would you feel during the Wall Street protests if a Ukrainian politician flew in and started calling for the overthrow of the American government? Like the American government, you're just paying lip service to the concept of democracy. Russia has been abiding by international law in regard to Ukraine. It's not meddling. But let me also state as well, and it's important for you to realise this, and people watching this programme, Russia and Ukraine have historically close relations. Russia is not an alien country in Ukraine. If it was an alien country, why is it that over 60% of Ukrainians belong to the Moscow Patriarch of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church? That means most Ukrainians, their spiritual leader, is in Moscow. If they hated the Russians so much, they wouldn't be following the Moscow Patriarch. That's absolute nonsense.
Belonged to the Church of England at some point. That did not prevent America to be independent.
That's absolute nonsense. You know that's nonsense. Let's just stick to Ukraine. Let's be serious. Let's be serious now.
Let me go to Robert here. What do you think the European Union should be doing now? Because they're in Moscow, in Kiev, as we're recording this program here. I mean, should they back away, or do you think they're going to continue to push here? Because I, first of all, don't understand why the European Union is trying to negotiate this. We've already seen what they want. They want to give a raw deal to the Ukrainians. They're going to force Yanukovych to reconsider. Why does outside powers have to force a government to reconsider its own domestic policy?
Well, many Western countries have been interfering in Ukraine for generations. The whole history of the West is trying to take control of this area, to try and limit Russia, to try and really restrict Ukrainian sovereignty. Ukrainian sovereignty should be respected by the European Union. The EU should back off. It should not be trying to export its regulations to Ukraine, which will damage their economy, cost it as much as £20 billion a year. It should be respecting sovereignty. It should not be meddling, and neither should the United States.
$1 billion euros? Get your numbers straight, please.
20 billion
You're
euros,
confused about the numbers, and you don't give me a source of the numbers.
All right, gentlemen. That will be the cost of EU regulations on the Ukrainian economy. It's already been bullying through restricting the amount of...
No,
that is a figure which has been widely
you just
quoted.
made it up.
It is understood. Look at the massive unemployment within the EU.
The market access of Ukraine to the EU
regulation.
Will improve the Ukrainian economy.
Gentlemen, you're talking over each other. No one hears a word you're saying.
Absolutely not.
All right?
Excessive regulation.
Hold it, guys. Hold it, guys. I know this is a contentious issue.
Widely accepted, even by the European Commission.
Ariel, Robert,
make it more
quiet,
transparent.
please. Okay. All right, I'm going to go to Marcus. I'll go to Marcus because he's listening. Okay, Marcus, where is this going here? Because I don't see any reason in the world why Mr. Yanukovych should blink. He's democratically elected. But what is the European Union going to say to these really savage people now in the Maidan? And you don't watch CNN and BBC. You're not going to see some of the horrific. They're savage people, absolutely savage. Slavish what they're doing to police officers and other people that don't agree with him on the square. Where's it going, Marcus?
Well, the ones who are shooting them...
I'm going to Marcus.
I think Ukraine... Unfortunately, actually, Ariel, I'm speaking now. Unfortunately, Ukraine is on the brink. It could end up descending into a civil war. The whole country could break up. And I can't see how that's going to be averted. It will only be averted if Washington and Brussels categorically condemns the terrible, appalling violence that we're seeing perpetrated by neo-Nazi mobs on the streets of Kiev. and also in the westernmost regions of Ukraine. But let's not forget, those mobs in Ukraine, they are stooges of the West, and they are willing stooges of the West. If they weren't getting supported politically and logistically by the United States and the European Union, they probably wouldn't be out on the streets in the first place. So in answer to your question, Peter, I'm very, very concerned about Ukraine because the West will not stop supporting these horrendous people on the streets that are killing police officers. And also, we had yesterday a governor in the westernmost region of Ukraine. We had yesterday,
Gentlemen,
we had a
please.
governor in the westernmost region of Ukraine.
Ariel, let's connect some dots here, because when there was the Munich Security the Munich Security Conference recently, okay, when then these opposition figures went and met with American officials, okay, and European officials, they go back to Ukraine and then the tone of intolerance. So we have to remember, Yanukovych said, okay, I'll bring you into the government. Okay, then just recently, an amnesty. Okay, what else do you want? We want you overthrown. I have to agree with Marcus. Where is that $5 billion? And that's a real number here. It's not fantasy number of where this money from the American taxpayers to overthrow this government. That's where they've been.
You asked me how we can stop this nonsense, right? So I'll tell you how we can stop it. First of all, let's not make things up. The West will never support the neo-Nazis. The United States did not give $5 billion because we don't have $5 billion. I wish we did. I wish we did have $5 billion to give to Ukraine.
They don't condemn the SS veteran parades every year in the Baltic states, do they? Why doesn't America and the European Union
we're talking about Ukraine
the
now.
SS veteran parades that we see every year in Estonia and Latvia?
Right.
Well, hang on. Why don't they condemn that? If they don't object to the glorification
Peter
of Nazism,
me a question.
why
I'm
don't they
trying to
condemn
answer.
what happens every year in Estonia and Latvia?
Go ahead, Ariel.
Answer that one.
I think we should have a round table. I think we should have a ceasefire, a round table, and elections. And that's how we can stop this horrible,
who's going to be at the round
event.
table, Ariel? Give me your round table. Go ahead. Who?
The round table will consist of the three opposition parties, and I detest Mr. Tarnibok, the Svoboda, the Liberty Party, because they have some Nazi sympathizers in them. I'm the first one to denounce them, but they're part of the mix right now. Clearly, the right-wing sector, or the right sector, should not be at the round table. And there should be an accepted mediator, because these people do not behave as adults, to my great, great regret. Russia and the United States probably should stay out, and an acceptable figure from Europe should mediate.
The United States is in at the moment.
Whoever the both parties accept. This is a reasonable solution.
Okay, go ahead, Marcus.
This is a reasonable solution. The alternative is a civil war.
Marcus,
you
jump in. I don't want to waste time, gentlemen. Marcus, jump in.
Ariel, how can you say the United States government should stay out? The United States government has been playing a role in Ukraine from the very beginning, and I don't mean 2013 and 2014. I take that back to the 1990s. Let's remember, 1992, the Pentagon's defense planning guidance stated clearly and unequivocally that Russia poses the greatest threat to America.
Marcus, finish up, Marcus. Go ahead, Marcus. Go ahead.
Ariel, I'm talking. The Pentagon's defense planning guidance in 1992 stated that Russia still poses the greatest threat to America's political dominance in the world, and that the states that used to be in Eastern Europe and the former Soviet Union should be brought into the EU and should be brought into NATO. Well, I'm very sorry, Ariel. You can discard documents like that, but that is the blueprint. That is the blueprint. And let's not forget, Zbigniew Brzezinski was saying in the 1990s that Ukraine should be brought into the European Union and NATO.
Thanks to my guests in London and in Washington, and thanks to our viewers for watching us here at RT. See you next time, and remember, CrossTalk.
I see. I love it. He's trying.